Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the table outside as well as on our website. There's also an automatic external defibrillator on the back wall of the legislative chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle? Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh? Here. Commissioner Friend? Here. Commissioner Garcia? Here. Commissioner Morgan? Here. Commissioner Rogers? Here. Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, October 18th, 2022 as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or an increased value on the property. Is there a motion to approve A and B? The motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next is citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber or on Zoom wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we do have 3 resolutions. We do not have need for an executive session, so this could include adjournment.
Motion to approve and adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next, we'll move to the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Corrections. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle? Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Here.
Commissioner Friend?
Here.
Commissioner Garcia?
Here.
Commissioner Morgan? Commissioner Rogers?
Here.
Madam Chair.
Present. Item A1, approval of the minutes of the Board of Corrections meeting held Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, here we go. Motion passes 7-0.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Corrections or on Zoom about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to the report from the Director of Corrections. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Commissioners. Michael Myers, Director of Corrections for Douglas County. You have before you my report for the month of September. Looking at enclosure number 1, administrative services. Following the 3rd month of the fiscal year, we are thankfully $1,617,858 under budget. I do want to point out that we have some renovation projects, safety-related projects that will begin later this month, so that I wouldn't expect that projection to keep growing throughout the rest of the year because we'll start receiving those bills for those projects in the coming months. There was $637,789 spent on overtime in September. That is a sharp increase. This is attributable to a couple of things. First of all, our staffing levels, and second, we have I think I sent you an email that you're aware of a very critical component of the installation of our new security system, where we are having to post several positions on a 24-hour basis. Thankfully, most of that should be wrapped up by the end of this week. Enclosure number 2, Community Corrections and Reentry Services. The Sanction Center and the Transitional Discharge Center placed a total of 21 individuals in community corrections that saved 100 bed days in the jail. Our 24/7 sobriety program admitted 29 individuals. There were 3,240 breath tests conducted. 12 were positive for alcohol use. There were 14 no-shows for alcohol breath testing, and the overall compliance rate for breath testing was 99.1%. 47 individuals were monitored for 1,096 days of SCRAM monitoring. There were no no-shows. There was 1 tampering violation and 3 alcohol violations. The SCRAM monitoring compliance rate was 99.6%. There were 973 drug tests administered with 71 violations and 45 no-shows. And there were 22 drug testing patches submitted for testing with 3 violations. Work release admitted 20 individuals. House arrest admitted 65 individuals. The Reentry Assistance Program, or RAP, admitted 22 individuals, and 1 individual there achieved their GED. Reentry Services / Therapeutic Communities admitted 122 individuals, and Reentry Services also began programming called the 24 and Under Collaborative to target services for those individuals between the ages of 18 and 24 who are incarcerated. I see that as a precursor to some bigger things that will develop for that age group in the coming months. Pretrial services had a very big month. Our new program went live on September 26th. There is no data to report yet, so you don't have any in your report. But you'll have the data for the new program as well as the legacy data for the folks that are still on the old program in each subsequent month. Early indications are quite positive on the reception from the judiciary. There have been a lot more people given an opportunity to have lower bonds and being placed on conditions of supervision such as GPS monitoring, face-to-face check-ins. The 24/7 sobriety program is now considered a condition of pretrial release rather than its own separate standalone program. So I do believe so far so good on how that program has launched. The reviews that I've gotten from the judges and from other criminal justice stakeholders from the prosecution side and the public defender side have been positive. There have been some glitches and some communication issues to iron out as expected, but we will work through those over the course of the coming months. Enclosure number 3, compliance. Our regular documentation is collected for all compliance processes. Our annual security audit was completed September 12th through the 16th. I want to thank the personnel from the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services who conducted this audit. We have sort of a collaborative arrangements where we will look at their facilities and they will look at ours. And a report of their findings will be forthcoming. Enclosure number 4, personnel. 4 officers below the rank of sergeant left employment in September. This includes the retirement of Thomas Belton, who served the Department of Corrections for nearly 26 years. I want to congratulate Thomas on his well-deserved retirement. And on a side note, Thomas was one of the first people who I got to know as he worked in RAP for many, many years. I can't remember anybody else besides him working that post. Wonderful individual, and I wish him well. We had 7 officers graduate our academy on September 16th. 8 officers began training on September 19th and will graduate on October 17th. As I alluded to last month, due to smaller class sizes and current staffing needs, we have implemented accelerating training, which will provide the same number of hours but concludes a week sooner. We have since taken the step of overlapping the training, the field training of a class right after graduation with the start of the next academy. So because the class sizes have been smaller, we have enough training staff to have them in 2 places at once. So we are now cranking out classes, if everything stays on schedule, every 4 weeks in an attempt to make whatever inroads we can staffing-wise. We do expect 11 new officers to begin academy training on October 17th. And 4 officers were promoted from CO1 to CO2 in September. Enclosure number 5, admissions. There were 1,303 admissions, and there were 1,292 releases. Our high count was 1,163, and our low count was 1,075. Our average daily population was 1,130. That was an increase of 13 from the month of August. There were 75 days of custodial bed sanctions. The U.S. Marshal population decreased. The felony pretrial population also decreased slightly. The misdemeanor pretrial population had increased, and probation violations increased. 19% of our population was between the age of 18 and 24. 66% of our population were minorities. 16% of our population were female, and 19% of our population were homeless or near homeless during September. Enclosure number 6, medical. There were 1,109 intake screenings. There were 443 health and physical assessments. Inmates were sent out 16 times for emergent medical care. 2 of those were by 911. There were 3 hospital admissions, which resulted in 7 combined days of hospitalization. So it was actually a less busy month in that regard than we've had. There were 54 off-site specialty medical appointments, and we did add a graph to give you the tracking of that over time under the tab under enclosure number 6. You'll find that. Enclosure number 7, mental health. There were 181 initial psychiatric assessments. There were 42 mental health assessments. There was 115 mental health infirmary placements. 164 individuals were placed on drug and alcohol withdrawal protocols. There were 11 referrals to the Board of Mental Health, and there were 5 transfers to long-term psychiatric facilities. Other items of note, we continue to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We had 1 known case of COVID-19 among the incarcerated population in September. We had 4 staff members who had tested positive. And our staff vaccination rate remains at approximately 75%. During September, we administered 49 first doses of Moderna, 13 second doses, and 32 booster doses. Separately, at Community Corrections, the Douglas County Health Department administered 21 second doses of Moderna. And as of October 1st, we have fully vaccinated 1,874 incarcerated individuals, and we've provided boosters to 273 individuals. And we have begun educational campaigns to encourage our staff and inmates to receive the Omicron-specific booster, as well as their annual flu shots. Our recently established recruitment teams have begun outreach to local colleges and career fairs. And finally, just before the pandemic hit, we were awarded a federal grant to become one of the first jails in the United States to outfit basically our entire department in body-worn cameras. There were some significant delays. The federal government basically shut a lot of these operations down for several months when COVID was first came over our country. And then we had to overcome some other logistical and technical obstacles, but those have been dealt with, and we now have achieved 100% deployment as of late August. All officers assigned to security posts are issued their own camera. And there are many individuals that deserve credit for this achievement. But joining me here today is Lieutenant Ted Swierczyk, who has been involved in this project from the beginning. And I'm going to ask him to come up and share some of the functionalities of the cameras and talk a little bit about some of the benefits we believe we will realize.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Ted Swersick with Douglas County Corrections. Going to talk to you a little bit about our cameras here. You want those switched on? Director Myers has a couple of cameras he can pass around if you want to see them. These are the Reveal D3 cameras. One of the important features on this camera that you'll be able to see is the front-facing screen. It makes it very obvious that you are wearing a camera and that it is recording. The two you have passing around right now are not recording, just so you know. Our hope is that with that front-facing screen, it'll add an extra layer of safety for staff and inmates. If it's clear that you have a camera on, and that screen kind of highlights it, we're hoping that that'll reduce assaults on staff, assaults on inmate, as well as provide a little more clarity for officers when they go to write their reports. They'll have the ability to review those cameras, review the footage. You're going to see better accuracy and more transparency. Any questions on them?
Okay. Will, why don't you stick around? There's quite a few lights on. But if you're done with your report, if that was the ending of it.
That was my final. Yeah, and we're really hoping this, like Ted alluded to, the transparency to the public. This also has audio for us, which is something our other cameras don't have. It's a great training tool when we debrief incidents and so forth. And we have seen when we piloted these quite some time ago, when inmates see this screen, they do tend to de-escalate because they know that they're being recorded, and what they say and do could be played in court if they continued on that path.
Good. Okay. With that, we do have some lights. Commissioner Friend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike and Lieutenant, can you say again? You might have said this. I'd have to run the transcript. How many of those are being issued?
We have enough for every staff member in the facility to wear. So when they come in the morning or whenever their shift starts, every officer is going to receive a camera. So every post, you're looking at a total of 300 and some odd cameras total. On any given shift, you're going to have anywhere between 100 for our 7 to 3 shift, probably 90 or so for 3 to 11, and significantly less for the overnights.
Okay. Good. Hey, thank you, Lieutenant. Hey, Mike, how going to enclosure 4 and personnel, how many and I should know this, I don't, how many candidates do we have the capacity to train in a class in any given month?
We have gone upwards of 25, maybe even a little higher historically. You get larger than that, it becomes a little bit challenging with the space availability that we have, as well as you start to lose some of the one-on-one teaching that you need to have. 20 is probably an ideal class size that we'd be shooting for.
Okay, and of the 8 officers that began training on September 19th, how many applications were analyzed? So, I mean, we got it down to 8. We sent them off to the advanced training. How many did you have to toss out, or how many decided not to pursue it?
I can't give you that number off the top of my head. What I can tell you is that our applicant pool has shrunk significantly, as they have for everyone. But to give you an exact number, I'd rather get you the actual answer and report back.
Okay, and you may not have an answer to this either, but I guess finally, we picked up 8 to go to training. Do we have any understanding about how many of them, if they're searching this type of vocation, do we get a feel for how many turned us down to go to, Cass County or go to the state or anything like that? Did they say, hey, thanks for the offer, but I'm heading over here? I mean, generally?
That's another question that I don't know if I could give you an accurate answer on right now.
Okay. Finally, a few years ago, and it was probably before your time, the county increased pay to a certain degree, I think $19 an hour to $23 an hour. Can you tell me do you have any historical or institutional knowledge that tells you what that actually did to recruiting? So in other words, when that pay hike came in, it seems logical, but I'm kind of wondering what that actually did. Did it bring us closer to authorized staffing levels at that time, if you look back historically?
I think it did. We were, it was actually just prior to my tenure.
Right.
There was an adjustment made for the entry-level wages. And part of this also ebbs and flows with the economy. I mean, sometimes what gives Joe Lorenz heartburn is actually good for me in hiring. The unemployment rate in general and so forth is, there are times where we've had hundreds of applicants to sift through, and we've been able to have basically as large a class as we could train at any given time. In terms of, and so we have, when we have, as everybody's aware, everything has been reset, and recalibrated in terms of of compensation for public safety workers. We had historically kind of been at the top edge of that with our peer institutions, and we were able to make significant gains in staffing. That may have also had to do with economic conditions that were outside of that as well.
Okay. Mike, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
And thanks for this. Lieutenant, I have a quick question for you regarding the cameras. And thanks, by the way, for this little demonstration, and thanks for your service. The cameras that you showed us are going into service. Is that what I understood? Or
They're in service.
They're in service. And you probably said this, but I didn't catch it. How many are there?
We have over 300 available. We're not going to need that many on a particular shift.
Right.
I think our biggest shift is going to have 100 to 120.
So if I'm a corrections officer and I come in for my shift, walk me through how I actually get the camera that I'm going to take on.
You'll report to the floor supervisor on the floor that you're assigned to and pick up a camera before you head to your assigned location.
Okay. And then at the end of my shift, what happens?
You're going to turn it back into that floor supervisor.
Okay.
And it'll get taken down by them to central control where they have the docking units. They'll dock the camera. It'll automatically download any footage on it.
So does it record my 8-hour shift automatically?
It's not going to record the entirety of your shift. You're still going to have to turn it on. So if you're responding to a code or an emergency in the building, you're going to turn it on. If you're dealing with an individual that might be emotional or erratic, you're probably going to want to turn it on. That's video that you're going to want to have in case something does end up happening.
Okay, so normally, I mean, you wear it on your outside, right?
Right, I've got one on right here.
Okay, I see it. Okay, and as you're going through your daily duties, it's not recording, it's not
Right.
on. But if something occurs that you feel should be memorialized, you hit a button and it goes on?
It's got a slide on the side that sticks out a little bit. It's very easy to find with your thumb. Slide it down. There's 3 audible beeps. You know it's recording.
And that recording,
It does have a feature that when you activate it, we can set the camera will always record. It's just when you activate it, there's a setting that you can go back. You can have the video start from up to 2 minutes prior to that.
okay? So the recording itself, is that stored internally or does it go to someplace?
It'll be stored internally until the camera is docked and then I believe we have a cloud-based storage.
And since they've been in service, have you accumulated a lot of recordings?
A ton of recordings.
And what happens to those? Do you keep them for some period of time?
There's, yeah, anything that's non-evidential we'll keep for a short period of time. Evidential stuff is going to be kept for a lot longer. What we do is, if I have say I have a code, a fight between two inmates, or whatever the situation might be, I'm probably going to have 7 or 8 responders to the scene. So I'm going to have those cameras brought down, docked, downloaded, and then I'm going to have to, as a supervisor, as a lieutenant, we go through those videos, looking for any discrepancies in the reports, looking for any inappropriate actions, looking for anything that might have been missed.
And that's your responsibility?
That is one of my responsibilities, yeah.
Okay. So do you do that on a daily basis?
On a daily basis.
Okay. And is there usually something every day?
We generally have codes every day, so yeah, we're generating a lot of video. We also deal with a significant number of mentally ill individuals.
Yeah.
And you end up getting a lot of video of that too, because they're a lot of times erratic, excited, engaging in activities that I don't want to discuss in this forum.
1 minute.
So you generate a lot of video dealing with that, de-escalation of situations.
So in your 8-hour shift, just real briefly, how much time would you devote to reviewing those on a daily basis?
Anywhere from, I would say, at least an hour a day. And then if I have a situation, you can have, there's days that I'll have 3 or 4 codes. And if you're looking at 7 or 8, cameras footage, each of those could be anywhere from a couple of minutes to 20 minutes. So a significant amount of time, several hours a day, can be spent doing this.
Well, thank you. I think this is a great, upgrade in our security and services there. So
Thank you.
Thanks for this.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yep. Yeah, thanks for all of that. Mike, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the new programs you mentioned. One was the 24 and under collaborative.
Yes.
About 20% of the folks in corrections are of that age group. And so I was
Correct.
just wondering if you could just tell us more about what that is.
So it's just gotten started, and I actually, what I probably should do is have the staff member who's doing it come in a subsequent meeting to give you a better understanding. But he's bringing in from across different housing units individuals that are of that age, with some similar backgrounds, and it's really kind of a cognitive behavioral group. It's done by our reentry services staff, so they also are kind of working to plug folks in with services upon their release as well. Eventually, and there's, it's been a goal of mine for some time to have a specific housing unit or therapeutic community, like as we call them, for that age group, where we can bring. There are a lot of services in the community that work with transitioning young adults, and to help people build their autonomy and independent living. So I think that we could bring a lot of positive resources into a housing unit and create a really good culture in a housing unit like that. Now that we're sort of getting back to normal after COVID, for the most part, those types of groupings might become more possible. So that is, I see this sort of as a precursor to something along those lines, where we have sort of a direct. It can become a feeder program into the young adult court. We have our veterans housing unit, which is kind of feeds into veterans court, and we have treatment programs which feed into drug court. We have another specialty court that specializes in this population, so it also makes sense for us to build that continuum of care and have a program inside the jail that can feed into young adult court and that post-release supervision that they provide.
So it sounds like a good idea to kind of subgroup these folks, because their needs are different, and help them become really.
Absolutely. They have a lot of years left to be productive citizens or not. So right. I think that it makes sense to emphasize your resources on that group.
Good. And then a couple other questions. Again, looking at the statistics, we go back to the homeless folks, or 20% of the population in there too. I'm sure that there are arrangements that you have or relationships you have with other community organizations that can get these folks kind of settled in one way or another. Can you give an example of some of
Sure.
those?
Again, a lot of that is with our reentry services,
Yep.
making those connections with transitional housing, or a lot of times it's the first step is getting them into treatment. Those to build that continuum of care for them. We have a pretty close working relationship with Sienna Francis House as well. They have built their own continuum of care. They're not, I don't want to say the word just, but they're not just a shelter. And so we work pretty closely with them as well.
Great. And then the other part always ends with mental health. I was looking at the graphs on the last couple pages, and on one it says that about 20% of the population has serious mental illness like schizophrenia, and then the next page there's a graph that says it's like 12, 13%. Regardless, it's a significant number, and I just want to point out, I guess, to everybody that this is why we're working on mental health in our community, and grateful for all the work that you're trying to do to take care of these folks. And Lieutenant, as you speak about having the cameras,
1 minute.
having the cameras that are needed, really it's really not just to it's really to protect those people too. So I think it's important to know that the efforts of the staff is recognized. That I'm sure that's not really why folks want to work at corrections, and it's probably the most challenging population to deal with. So we're trying to get resources put together to make that a lot easier for you, but also better for those folks too. So, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. Just one quick follow-up question, Lieutenant, regarding and I think you touched on this, the protocols for training corrections officers in the use in these, with these cameras. They are trained to use them, right?
Yeah, they are. It takes approximately 2 hours to teach them effectively how to use it. That includes how to play back videos on the cameras,
Right.
how to record.
So are they trained in when to turn them on?
Yes.
And if there's an incident where they were supposed to turn them on and they didn't turn them on, what happens?
We'd start with a counseling, either a informal or formal counseling, depending on the situation. If that happens over and over again, it's going to get pushed up the line. It'll get pushed up the line to where disciplinary action could be taken.
Okay. Has that been a problem?
Initially, yeah. A lot of people weren't used to having the cameras. It's something that we
There's
hadn't
kind of
had.
a learning curve there.
Yeah.
But it's tapered off now? They're getting it?
I don't see very many issues with it now.
Okay,
No.
great. Just a few quick questions, Mike, because I know you were waiting for this. The staffing levels seem to be lower a little bit, particularly among corrections officers. We're authorized for 349, and we have 289 on staff, or 82.8% of the staffing levels. I think you mentioned that we have 11 new officers coming on this week. Is that right?
There are 8 in training and 11 that are scheduled to start a week from yesterday. So yes, next week.
That'll help a little bit. And I think Commissioner Friend asked you about the loss and our attempts to stop loss relative to that. And, if you could supply us with some of that, I don't expect it right now, that would be great, just so we know, what it's been like since June. The average daily population of 1130, that seems to be
Up slightly, but not, we're in a better spot than we were 12 months ago in that regard.
And finally, the majority-minority population of our correction center is up to 66.03%. And I know you don't have any control over that, but the programs that we're running, I mean, all for the good and everything, I don't know why this continues to be a chronically high number. And maybe that's part of a larger discussion, but it seems to be up now.
It is, and I have a hope, and I it's just a hope. It's not a prediction. but I have a hope that the new pretrial release program will level the playing field to an extent. If there's a lesser reliance on cash bonds and more of a reliance on conditions of supervision, and that may allow people who come from a lower socioeconomic background a chance
And when do
to
you
be
see
successful.
that happening?
Well, the program just went live on September 26th. So it'll take some time, a period of several months before I could probably tell you whether I start to see a trend that
Right.
this is happening or not. But hopefully over the course of 2023, we could maybe realize some
Sure.
positive outcomes. But I can't predict that.
No,
mean,
I understand. As you know, I come back to this every month, so we'll have an opportunity to revisit this and actually see some of the progress, hopefully. Thanks. Thank you.
No other lights from commissioners? Anyone else wishing to speak during this section of the agenda? All right. Thank you both for being here, and thanks for the demonstration.
Thank you.
We don't have need for an executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn out of the Board of Corrections?
Aren't you supposed to have citizen comment?
I asked, you didn't get up.
You need to get a new sound.
Well, get up and
Excuse me.
speak if you
Thank
want to
you.
speak.
That's my first issue is, I think you need a new sound system. I should not have to come down to the front row to hear you, hear them. I've mentioned that a number of times. Maybe it's a selective speaker, I don't know. There's no other citizens here to help complain, I guess. I don't have a total hearing loss. Secondly, we seem to be lack of activity, I think probably because we don't want to make too many blunders before the election. But this election is a very important election, as was the last. And we have a gentleman in Omaha that's written a book covering all states in this nation about what happened with the election. There are many other people that have. Plain fact and common sense is the majority of the people feel there was something extremely wrong with that election and that we were cheated, that it was maybe stolen, and it had to be stolen by party-affiliated people. You could say Democratic Party. You could say national nonprofit organizations like Bill Gates. And shake your head, but that's all over the news, Mr. Rogers. You can disagree with me all you want and call me a liar, but it's all over the outlying areas. All 48, all 52 states in there, and 4 different presentations right here in River City that I've been to that refute you're shaking your head. And this is what's wrong. One of the magazines that's widely known and widely read by Christians is about our country and our constitutional republic that's been lost. Shake your head to that, but it has been. Because there's not one federal official or judge that wanted to hear the evidence that is available. They refused to hear the evidence. They refused to discuss it. You people refused to discuss it. You refused to answer my letters, my emails, requesting it be discussed, amongst other things. My own representative doesn't reply. Now, how is that for citizen engagement? That's sort of like losing your republic, isn't it? This country needs this discussion, needed it before now. But our election system is wrong, and every citizen that goes out there to vote personally, as it should be, not mail in, and not 30 days ahead of time, should take their cameras with them. And when they see something irregular, take a picture and contact your local sheriff, because that's where it happens. Your Secretary of State's not interested. Your governor's not interested. Your state senators aren't interested. But the local sheriffs are. But they have to have somebody that'll complain. So that's what citizens should do. Let's maybe stop the steal of this election. And quite frankly, shake your heads to this, Mr. Rogers. A lot of people out there are saying this election is going to be delayed. And maybe we won't even have it. That's how citizens feel out there. Shake your head, but Look at the hundreds of thousands of people that go listen to Mr. Trump and stories like this. Every time. Look at the turnout for the Democrats. Nothing like it. The interest is nothing like it. You're not listening, you're not paying attention, and that is your job. The Declaration of Independence says that when your government doesn't, it is our right, not yours, but our right to alter, change, and abolish that government. But they said basically through the 25th, the Fifth Amendment, Article 5. They didn't say another revolution, but some people do not understand that. It's through we the people. Article 5 is for the states. The founding fathers were very precise in their language. The states meant the people, because when they drafted that, there was no government except colonial power government through colonial governors through a corrupt king. So it was the people that met and the people that discussed these things before the Constitution happened. So that when they refer to the states in Article 5, they mean the people, not the state legislature. And quite frankly, we lost by one vote down there for an Article 5 convention. For us, it's not their job to do that. It's our job. Their job is just to send our petition to Congress. Study your Constitution. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the Board of Corrections about an item not on the agenda? There is no need for executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
Commissioner Morgan. Motion passes 7-0.
We'll move to the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle. Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Here. Commissioner Friend.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia. Here. Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Madam Chair.
Present. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. And item B, approval of claims submitted for payment processed through Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve A and B?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Morgan. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Consent agenda, items A through E. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes, just for the record on item B, which is settlement and release of claims against Douglas County for $45,000 not budgeted. This, so people will know, is a settlement and release of basically a civil rights lawsuit against the county, Douglas County Health Center, and Aaron Nelson for $45,000. $75,000 of that, or $33,750 in lost wages. 25% of that, or $11,250 in non-wages. This was mediated, which is an effective cost-saving way to settle cases that, you know, would be much more expensive if they were litigated and gone to trial. The defendant, Douglas County in this case, agrees to pay the cost of mediation, which was held on September 23rd of this year by the mediator, Miss Amy Van Horn of Kutak Rock. And the county agrees our representative, Aaron Nelson, will provide a positive and favorable recommendation in response to any third-party employer inquiry with no admission of liability on the part of the county. I just put that in the record so people will know when they see something like this. This is kind of a process short of litigation for settlement of claims against the county. This one was by plaintiff Kylie Washington, employee of the Douglas County Health Center. And with this, it is disposed of. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on consent agenda items? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next is recognition and proclamations. There's a resolution recognizing October as the Youth Justice Awareness Month. And this was, we've done this every year, but I'm going to have Commissioner Rogers read the first 5, and then I'll read the last 5.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Whereas the historical role of the juvenile court system is to rehabilitate youth while holding them accountable and maintaining public safety, and is therefore better equipped to work with youth than the punitive nature of the adult criminal justice system. And whereas youth are distinct from adults, and these differences have been documented by national research on the adolescent brain development and acknowledged by the U.S. and state Supreme Courts, including but not limited to state and federal laws that prohibit youth under the age of 19 from taking on major adult responsibilities, such as voting, jury duty, military service, and whereas youth of color and youth with disabilities, mental and behavioral health issues are disproportionately represented in the criminal and juvenile justice systems, and whereas youth who are in the juvenile court system must be able to access age-appropriate services and education while remaining closer to their families and communities, all of which national research indicates reduces the likelihood of future offending, and whereas most laws allowing for the prosecution of youth as adults were enacted prior to the research studies completed by the Center for Disease Control and the Office for Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which showed that prosecuting youth in adult courts actually decreases public safety, and those youth are 34% more likely to commit future crimes than youth prosecuted in the juvenile justice system. And
whereas youth detained or involved in the juvenile or criminal justice system should be kept in the least restrictive setting possible with family inclusion and treatment-oriented services provided. And whereas Douglas County has demonstrated a commitment to strengthening care for juveniles by partnering with the public and private sectors to create effective alternatives to detention, and to develop a continuum of community and family-based services designed to serve youth and their families safely. And whereas it's our shared responsibility to ensure that all youth in Douglas County can reach their full potential. And whereas the month of October has been declared National Youth Justice Awareness Month, now therefore be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby declares the month of October 2022 as Youth Justice Awareness Month in Douglas County. And this board encourages all residents of Douglas County to consider how they can engage in positive actions that can assist our youth to reach their full potential. Dated this 11th day of October 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
so moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Boyle. And I do want to thank LaVon Stennis for bringing this to our attention, as she did when we first started this, to again do it this year. And if there are any community providers in the audience that provide services to our youth, I would invite you to come to the podium and introduce yourself and what organization that you're with, and what service you provide to the youth at this time. Okay. No questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
We'll move to citizen comments. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I'm going to present something to the board again today. Hello, Wayne.
How are you?
I'm good. This is not by me. This is a well-known professor from the Heritage Foundation talking about the Marxist revolution is in the making in America. An expert warns, not me. This is an expert. Last name is Gonzalez. There's a phenomenon being observed in America today, an attempt at changing reality to foster a new Marxist revolution, says Mike Gonzalez, an author of one or two books on the subject. According to Marxist thought, reality is just put together by our conceptual framework, he told Epic TV's Crossroads program. So what we see with Black Lives Matters, what we see with 1619 Project, is to replace the American narrative, to replace the idea of America from all men are created equal to we're all free. And that's stated in the Constitution. But with the idea that we're an awful country, that our country is hideous, that our system is racist, and I'm still guilty, and that the system must be changed. That's all I'll give you today, but you can read it. You can question it. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda?
Good morning. Chief Deputy Wayne Hudson, Douglas County Sheriff's Office. One item that you just covered was youth programs. I didn't want that to be the last thing that the county board heard today. So a few items at the sheriff department that we use as far as youth programs is school resource officers. We also have Explorers program. We have mentoring. We have PACE. So we have several different organizations or different programs for youth in our community. And they're all geared towards breaking down the barriers between youth and law enforcement. Because when we do that, then hopefully we can see these young kids grow up and respect law enforcement like they used to do back in the day. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone else? Next, we'll move to presentations. We have a presentation by Reconnect Inc. On a parent resource. This is presented by Levon Dennis Williams. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for having me. Levon Dennis Williams, 1941 South 42nd Street, Suite 502, Omaha, Nebraska, 68105. I come today to present a book that I have written to help parents dealing with children who have oppositional defiant disorders and perhaps conduct disorder. Before I go into the book briefly, though, I would like to direct you to our dedication page in which I am dedicating the book to the Honorable Mike Boyle, who I remember one day after I felt kind of defeated. He told me, hang in there, kid, you're onto something. And I wish he could see that that really has happened. I also direct you to page 2, in which I acknowledge the contributions that the commissioners, past and present, have made to this book in terms of supporting our programming. I particularly acknowledge Commissioner Rogers and Commissioner Borgeson, although we have not always agreed at times, publicly and privately, we have always stayed connected with the focus on helping our youth. There has been no disagreement that has gotten us to not come back together when it came to supporting our kids. And so to Commissioner Borgeson and Commissioner Rogers, I do acknowledge and appreciate your support. So this book is a long time coming. In 2012, when I was a returning citizen and I was given an opportunity by this commission body to work with kids, many people questioned why that was so, but there was the commissioners who stood behind that decision. As a result of that, I've had a chance to serve thousands of kids since then. And one thing I did notice that got me to start writing this book or collecting information was the referrals start changing. When I first was receiving referrals for children, it was for truancy or absenteeism. And now the referrals are for violent acts, stealing cars, fighting parents, robbing people, and the list goes on, and you are aware of that. And so for the past 6 years, I've been collecting anecdotal and other information about these households, these kids. I've met with countless child pediatricians, including Chief Hudson's sister, Dr. Kathy Hudson. I've traveled the country meeting with people. I've met with therapists, child therapists. And as I was Googling this information, certain behaviors became common in the kids that I was serving. And then when you look at the diagnosis, it kept pointing to oppositional defiant disorder. So I took this information and I met with professionals and I asked them, what am I looking at here? And they said, well, yeah, you're correct. This is a behavior that often goes undiagnosed because parents don't know how to get it treated. So what they do, they end up calling law enforcement. And then that child enters the system because of his behavior as opposed to getting the treatment that he or she might need. And so what we have here is a compilation of all of the information I've gathered from professionals as well as my firsthand experience. The whole goal of this book is designed to give parents resources so they will know how to address their child. So they're no longer relying upon the police department as the third or surrogate parent. That we can now begin as a community to start looking at how we can put resources behind treating these kids as opposed to prosecuting. And we know what that is going to end up looking like toward the end. We are going to have lower disproportional minority contact, something that we've been fighting for years. We're going to have fewer kids entering our juvenile justice system and later entering our prison system. And so the book is written, I had to write it 4 or 5 different times to get it to a level where parents can understand it. And the parents love it. It's written in a brief way to explain to them what their kid may be suffering, how to diagnose it, and how to bring in the professionals. But the good thing about the book, I believe, is how it gives them resources as to what they can do as parents in terms of parenting. We define for them the various parenting styles, what works and what doesn't work, and we give them real resources that they can understand and grasp in this community. The other good thing about the book is that it takes into account the fact that we have to start looking at our kids from a standpoint of how are we parenting the kid. And one of the things I tell parents is that what behavior do you want to see in your child, and are you modeling that behavior? So this book addresses that. It doesn't just put the responsibility back into the community, it puts the responsibility with parents by giving them real resources. Ultimately, I would like to get this book in the hands of everyone who has contact with system-involved youth. I would like to have it available for Douglas County Corrections to give it out to parents. I would like to have it available for probation, for the Juvenile Assessment Center, for schools. Unfortunately, I was not gifted with rich parents and a husband who feels that I have taken a vow of poverty. So I don't have the resources to be able to get these books out there, but I hope after you all have had a chance to read the book, I do hope you will read it, that you will consider how you can partner with Reconnect in getting the book in the hands of the community parents who need it the most. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Levon. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, first and foremost, I'm really touched that you dedicated that line to my father. He, of course, was really good at recognizing talent and effort and heart and dedication and mission, and he loved to elevate people who really had their hearts in the right place and are just trying to do the right thing for families and for our community. And he's actually told me that same exact quote. So that what, hang in there, kiddo, you're onto something great. So to still let you know that for him to say that to me as his daughter and to say that to you tells you that he was completely serious about that, and it means a lot. So I want to thank you for honoring him this way, and I know that he would love this moment, and he would probably have tears in his eyes if he were sitting here today. So, but I know he's worked with you over the years. He has a lot of respect for everything you're doing to try to help the youth in the community. And the thing is, you're taking an approach that's just not not usually investigated or seen, or I think it's a spot where people just don't know what to do, and somehow, some way, you've been able to garner a lot of that and figure out how, just little pieces on how to fix it. And I think we have big ideas, but sometimes operationally putting that in place is the challenge. So he recognized that you had that, and he would talk to me about you and what you were trying to do, well before I was ever on this board. So I want to thank you for your efforts as well. And like I said, it's a heartfelt thank you. I know that he would be 100% honored and just thrilled that you thought that highly of him to include that. Thank you.
I want to echo what Commissioner Boyle said, because I actually remember that day, and so this is just so appropriate, and I'm sure he's smiling down at you right now and the comments that you made, and for Levon for the dedication of the book. Levon is one that, I mean, you never cease to amaze me at the things that you take a hold of and bring to the attention, but come up with solutions. You always include the families in your conversations or in your possible solutions that you move forward with. If we could have, like, 1,000 other yous out there doing what you do, it would be pretty amazing. But what you've done with your program and what you continue to do for the kids and families in our community, I just can't thank you enough. And I'm very proud to be not only your friend, but partner in addressing our juvenile issues in Douglas County. And so I thank you not only for the book, but we'll put my thinking cap on and see how we can partner on that, but continue to partner with making sure that we provide what our kids and what our families need as we move forward into the future. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, no other questions or lights. Thank you very much. The move to committees, we have the budget report as presented. We have no human resources, the weekly personnel report from civil service as presented. No legislative items at this time. And we do not have need for an executive session. And so with that, do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Friend. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0. We're adjourned at 10:02 a.m.
Thank you, thank you.